Welcome to Grief Healing for Moms. My name is Fabiana Batista, and I am a mom who went through the unimaginable heartbreak of losing her 4-month-old baby. Now, through that pain and that suffering, I've rediscovered joy. And that is the main reason why I created this podcast, to bring hope and healing to moms who may be walking in grief at the moment. So, with that being said, my guest today is a mom who I admire deeply. Her name is Jackie. Jackie is one of the Jackie's story and mine goes back. Jackie actually she suffered the loss of her son Justin, who was struck by a car. And she's gonna tell her story more in depth. But thank you so much for joining me today. I know this is a very hard conversation, and you're so open to talking about it, but that does not make it any less painful. So thank you so much for being here today and for the willingness and the openness to want to tell your story so that we can help other moms that may have gone through a similar situation to yours. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, Fabiana. And I just want to also thank you for inviting me to be a guest speaker on your podcast. And I just want you to know that I'm so proud of you for doing this and how much I admire you for being a mom and a wife and an entrepreneur and taking something that has caused so much pain and turning it into purpose and wanting to be able to help others along their healing journey. And so I thank you for, again, just pushing through and creating this podcast. I know so many lives are going to be transformed through this podcast.
That's all I want. That's all I want. It's just to be able to reach other moms, because I know when we went through it, and we'll get into the story, but when we've gone through our situations, and I'm sure other moms out there feel the same, it feels very lonely.
Yes.
It feels lonely, even if you're surrounded by people, because unless you've been through the loss of a child, it feels lonely because nobody can understand unless they've experienced it as well. So it's almost like you feel this sense of like, oh my God, I'm heard, or somebody gets me. Or even if you talk about it and you're talking about it with, your family members, they don't fully know that feeling.
Correct.
So, but let me ask you this before we get into the actual story. What would you like our viewers to get out of you sharing the story today?
So the main thing that I would want the viewers to take away from today is that they would know that there is hope. There is hope for the hurting, that they are not alone, that there is a community of moms out there who have gone through this unimaginable loss and this unimaginable pain, and that they're not alone, that there is a community of women available to walk alongside them, to support them, to encourage them, and that grief is so multifaceted, and there are so many different emotions they're going to experience throughout the journey, and that it's okay to not feel okay, and that everything that they're feeling is part of the process. But my biggest takeaway would be that they know that they're not alone and that there's hope.
I love that, Jackie. That's beautiful. All right, so tell us about Justin, our little angel Justin.
So my story goes back to October 29th, 2021. My son, Justin, who was 17 at the time, he was a senior in high school. He attended one high school, and because that high school didn't have sports, he played football, varsity football for another high school nearby. And so he was very into conditioning and working out and staying in shape. And so it was a very early on a Friday morning. It was a teacher planning day. He woke up very early and he went for a run right alongside 152nd Street, which is right outside the community where we live. And as he was running along the sidewalk, he was struck by a car. The person that struck him didn't stop. She did not call for aid. She proceeded to drive home, where she parked her car in her backyard, and she covered it with a tarp and she hid. And she knew what she had done was wrong. Those around her knew what she had done was wrong. And yet they didn't do anything to help my son. How I came to know of what happened a few hours later, my younger son, Ethan, who was 10 at the time, and Bella was 6 at the time, they got up early and ran to their brother's room because since there was no school, they had plans on spending the day together. And so when they went into his room, they didn't see that he was there. And so they ran upstairs and they woke me up and they told me, Mom, Justin's not in his room. And so, of course, immediately I confused. I was like, what are you talking about? Of course he's in his room. And so I ran downstairs. He was, in fact, not in his room. And so I started to call his cell phone. He wasn't answering. I called his girlfriend. I couldn't get a hold of her. I thought, he's 17. Maybe he went to go see his girlfriend. And then I thought, let me check my car. Is my car still there? Because he did have his license. And so I opened the door and I looked in my driveway. My car was there. Oh my gosh. And it just couldn't make sense of what was happening. And I had really no answers at this point. I was just trying to figure out where he was. And in that moment of just trying to find where he was, I got a notification on my phone, Nextdoor app. I have the Nextdoor app, and a notification pops up on my phone. And when I glanced at it, it said something like, does anyone know what's causing the heavy traffic on 152nd Street? And I immediately thought, that's right outside the community. And so I opened the app and I started to read the comments. And that's where I saw that someone wrote tragic hit and run or fatal hit and run. And so without even hesitating, my heart sank. I thought, God, please, I pray this has nothing to do with us. But I didn't have anything else to go off of, and it was right there. So I had the kids jump in the car, frantic. We pulled up as close as we could because they had the street blocked off. And I walked up to the officer. I told him what was happening, and he told me to wait there. He saw that I had the kids in the car. He told me to wait there, and he walked away. And when he came back with 2 detectives. And so I proceeded to explain to the detectives what was going on.
But at this point, you didn't know?
No, I didn't know anything. I just knew that there was an accident there. I knew that there was a fatality. But I didn't, there was no confirmation that this had anything to do with my son.
And you couldn't
at that
see?
Point. No, because from where they blocked off the street, it was like towards the center of the block, but it was a really long block, like I would say about 5 avenues worth. So was the center, or it was closer to the other avenue than the avenue that I was standing. So I couldn't see.
Okay.
it was, you could see, I don't remember
No,
also because there's parts that
of
you
course. We block out.
forget because of the shock. And so they asked me for his name. They asked me for a picture of him. I showed them a picture of him. They asked me in regards to any features or birthmarks that he may have. They asked me what he could have been wearing. He asked me for his phone number, and they told me, stay here. We'll stay here. We're gonna look into this, and we'll be back in a few minutes. And so I remember at that point, I called my friend and I told her what was going on. And I just told her, please pray. This is what's going on. Please pray. I'm just feeling super nervous. I'm waiting here for the detectives to come back and speak with me. But I just need prayer right now because my nerves are all over the place. And so she stayed on the phone with me. We prayed, and the detectives came back. And so they told me that they couldn't confirm at the moment. If it was my son, they said, listen, we can't confirm at this moment, but we want to help you. But this is not a safe place for you because there's a lot of traffic. You have the kids in the car. So where do you live? And I said, I live right inside this community. And they said, give us your address. We go home and we're going to send someone to your house to help you find your son, to figure this out. And so then I said, okay. And so I got back in the car. I drove home. And of course, my nerves are still all over the place. I'm still calling his phone, no answer, no response. And I come inside. The kids don't really know what's happening. They're just being their usual playful selves. And there's a knock at my door. And it was within minutes of me getting home. It was almost as if they had driven right behind me, because I got home and just a few minutes later, there was that knock at my door, and it was the same two detectives. And so they asked if they could come inside. And I told them, yes, of course, come in. And I could already see the look on their face. And they asked me if I could send the kids upstairs to their room. So I did. And then they asked me if there was anyone that I could call to come be with me. And at that point, I knew. And I couldn't think of a single person. At that point, I just blanked out. I just remember being so engulfed with grief and denial, really.
Of course, you don't want to believe it.
Because you don't want to believe they're confirming that the person on the side of the street that had passed was your child. And so I just had so many thoughts racing through my mind.
Of course.
And they just kept asking me, who can you call? Who can you call? And I remember saying things like, I don't have a lot of family here in Miami. Most of my family is up north. And so I kept saying, I don't have any family here. I don't know who to call. And it's shocking it's incredible how grief works, because it sends you into a state of shock. Because I could have called my neighbor next door. I've been living in that house for, at that point, 18 years. And there were neighbors that were right there next to me that I could have called. And when I finally thought to call someone, it was my friend who lives in the Redlands. And but that's the person that I'd been on the phone with praying with.
Yeah.
And so I called her and I told her, the cops are here in my house. Please come as quickly as you can. They're telling me that they need someone to come be with me. I don't like the way this sounds. And so immediately she hangs up and she tells me that she's on her way. And so, as you can imagine, there was a lot of traffic on 152nd Street because of the accident. And so it took her a little bit longer to get to me. And so
And in this
I
time that
think
you're waiting,
in that time I'm waiting.
did they tell you, like, did they confirm, did the cops confirm that it was him? And did they get any part of the
So
story?
I think that they were trying to wait, but I started to
Of course.
like hyperventilate. I remember I needed to walk outside to my backyard. I couldn't breathe, and I felt like I was going through something that I had never experienced in my life.
What emotions did you experience in that moment?
I was in denial. I was angry. I was confused. I had it was all hit me at once and I couldn't think. I think that was the biggest thing, is that I couldn't process. I couldn't think straight. And in that time that I was waiting for my friend to get to my house, they ended up telling me that that the person on this that had been involved in the accident was in fact my son. And I remember asking them, well, how do you know? Like, how can you confirm this? Like I guess I needed like proof. Like, how do you
Of
know
course.
it's him?
Yeah.
And they told me that when they dialed the phone number that I had given them for him, the phone that was with him rang. And so there's not a lot that I remember after that point, like where they actually confirmed to me. I know that my friend finally got there, but it had been already all over the news. And people were starting to find out, and they started calling and showing up. And the detectives did explain to me, because I didn't even think to ask, how did this happen? None of that. I was just in shock.
Of course.
And I had no questions. I was just like frozen. And so they did explain to me that the reason why they could not proceed and why they were there so long at the scene of the accident was because they couldn't identify who he was, because he was running and he didn't have identification with him. And so now that they knew who he was, they needed to move quickly to find the person that had done this. And so they left, but they gave me their
Information.
contact information and told me that I could call them and that they would be in communication with me throughout the day. But that I remember them telling me that they just wanted me to know that they were going to treat this case like it was their own family member. And I remember thinking, like, please, God, I just hope that they find who did this. And so they left, and to this day, I am so grateful that God hand selected the team of detectives that he hand selected to be on this case, because they found the person that was responsible for the accident. And hours later, but they found her same day. A few hours later, they did find her, and today she is being held accountable for her actions. It took about 2.5 years for the sentencing to happen, but she is being held accountable today for her actions. And so that's basically what happened to my son, or how the accident occurred. And
Did you have no? What was, I guess, the lowest point? Because I feel like through, loss, and this is your 17-year-old. I mean, I can't even imagine.
yeah,
If it's hard losing a 4-month-old,
yeah.
a 17-year-old is even harder. But what was your low point, I guess, and what helped you get out of, or start getting out of, that lowest point where you feel like you're completely broken and nothing that you do, like you're never going to be a whole person again?
So that accident happened on a Friday, and that Sunday, as you can imagine, my family starts to discover what occurred. And so they start driving in, flying in. And that Sunday morning, I remember that Sunday morning, I'm having breakfast, and my family was just I just remember them running around the house, and they kept encouraging me that we shouldn't attend church. And I remember just sitting there thinking, I don't understand how they can think that I can go anywhere or talk to anyone, because again, I was very much still in a state of shock and processing, and just so inundated in grief. And I remember that they just kept asking, like, we should go to church, let's go to church. And I am trying to control my emotions and not
Lash out. Send them to
lash out and tell them, like, you have no idea, how you were saying at the beginning, it's you, until you have experienced this yourself, you have no idea the amount of grief, or the level of grief that one carries when they experience the loss of a child, because it feels out of order, right? And so I was just sitting there, and they just keep running around, and I already had my mind set up that I was not going to church. I was like,
and you have been to church before. It's not this.
I am an active member of
No,
my
I know,
church.
I know. But before this happened,
Yes.
you were already
We
active
attend church.
in the church. Okay.
We serve at church. My son was a part of their youth ministry, their youth group. And so we have a church that we attend. And so I was sitting there just thinking, like, you can go if you'd like, if that's going to help you, but I just wanted to stay home. And so I was already falling into the feelings of isolation, right? And there was just like a moment where I was just there in my thoughts. And I remember just getting this overwhelming feeling tell me, get up and go to church. Your family needs to go to church. And it's like, I just like woke up, and I was like, okay. And so I announced, I was like, we're going to church. And they were like shocked. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get ready. We're going to church. And so then they were like, oh my God, she says we're going to church. So they all started running around, getting ready. And I go to my room. I'm still thinking, like, I don't even know what I'm doing at this point. I'm like, let me just take a shower. But for some reason, I need to be at church, and my family needs to be at church as well. And so we arrive at church like 20 deep. I had so many family members that had flown in, and friends that were with us. And so we show up at church. no one at church knew that we were coming that day. They knew that the accident had occurred, but they didn't know that we were showing up. And so immediately I was greeted, person after person, just open arms,
Of course.
sharing their condolences. They were able to somehow open up an entire section for me and my family to sit and receive the message that day. And I'll never forget being there and listening to the message that our pastor shared that day. Was exactly what I needed to hear. And his topic was conviction versus condemnation. And I remember thinking, this is exactly what I need to hear, because I was feeling so condemned. I was feeling all of these feelings of, why my son? Why he was only 17 years old. You start thinking of, it's his senior year. What about graduation? What about his last football game? What about his sports awards ceremony? What about prom?
All
Like,
the
why did
plans
this
that you
happen?
have.
All the plans that we had for his 18th birthday and what we were gonna do and where we were gonna go. And then you start thinking, like, what could I have done to prevent what happened, right? Because then you also go down that rabbit hole too.
The guilt.
The guilt of, what if I would have woken up in the middle of the night and walked downstairs and checked on him and noticed in that moment, you're not here, where are you? Called him, pulled him back. And I just kept going down this rabbit hole of, like, what could I have done to change? How could I have prevented this? And when I heard that message, I just remember thinking I was able to slowly turn all of those feelings that I had been feeling, and I started to have a different outlook. And so I remember we leave service. Service ended. We were invited into the pastor's lounge. They gathered and prayed over me and my family, and they were extremely supportive. And when we got home, my house was filled with people. I mean, it was full. And I remember I had a moment where I was feeling very overwhelmed and just still processing, not really there, but not there. And so I stepped away to take a shower. And while I'm taking the shower, I remember crying. I feel like I've never cried so deeply the way I cried when I was in that shower. And I was so riddled in grief. And I remember crying out to God because I was so angry. I was so mad. And I remember saying, God, why didn't you save him? You could have saved him. Like, where were you? You're this God that I've known my entire life. And I've seen you do miracles. And I've seen you do the impossible. And why didn't you do it for my son? And it was there that God met me in my lowest moment. And I heard him respond in a way that it's him, right? I heard a response to my question.
You did?
And
What do you say?
I will tell you, I've been in church my entire life, and there's only been less than a handful of times that I can say that I heard God's voice, right? And in that moment, I heard him respond to me. I did. I was there. I was there. And I did save him. And he's with me now.
Oh, doggy.
And when you hear, when you know that that's God, I can't explain the feeling. It was like an instant, in an instant, this anger, this bitterness, it was almost like this weight had been lifted.
Like peace, right?
And this peace replaced all of that. That's peace that the Bible speaks of, that peace that surpasses all understanding. I understood exactly what that verse meant in that moment, because that's exactly what I felt. I just felt
Can you say the verse?
peace.
You know the Bible a lot better than I do.
It's a God will fill you with a peace that surpasses all human understanding. And so it's something that you can't understand, you can't explain it. You don't know how it's even humanly possible, but you feel it.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I said, my son is in heaven. He's with Jesus. He's here, and
That feeling is
and I was
such a
reminded
beautiful
that
feeling.
my son's loss wasn't in vain, that there was purpose beyond what had occurred. And I was reminded of a verse in that moment, John 3:16, which says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him would not perish but have eternal life." And I thought to myself, my son came to know the Lord at a very young age. He knew the Lord. He loved the Lord. He was serving and following the Lord. And I thought, he's with Jesus, And in that moment, in that very moment, God also gave me a vision of what his celebration of life would end up being. It was like I just started having like a vision and flashes of,
Oh, wow.
I remember seeing a lot of people, hundreds. And I remember seeing like lights, like candles. And I just remember seeing a lot of people, a lot of lights, and a lot of hands raised. And I remember thinking, there's so many people that are going to come to know the Lord because of what my son has gone through, or what happened. And so fast forward, at his celebration of life, we did end up having close to 1,000 people in attendance. He did belong to 2 high schools, family, church, friends. And in that moment where others had the opportunity to receive Christ, so many hands went up. You couldn't even count them.
Oh my gosh, how
And
beautiful.
so
That peace, that feeling, and I know that feeling, because so when my dad passed away when I was 15, and instead of leaning and turning towards God, I was a teenager and I didn't know any better. I wasn't, I believed in God, but it wasn't where I am now, right? So back then, instead of turning towards him, I turned away from God, and I was very angry, and I kept asking why. So I went to a very, what I like to call a dark place. I was very angry. I would cry every single night for a period of about 7 years. When Dax passed at 4 months old, it was in that instant, I remember thinking, and I told my husband, Danny, in the hospital, I said, I don't know how we're going to make it through this, but I'm not going back to that dark hole. And it's like that moment where you choose, it's like that fork in the road, right?
where you ask yourself,
where you
how
have
am
to,
I going to survive this?
how am I going to survive it? I don't know how I'm going to survive it, but you have a choice of which grieving path or which healing path do you want to take. Correct. The angry, why God, why'd you do this to me? I can't believe you didn't save my person, my child, or that moment of all right, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but you better help me. Please help me. And I'm going to choose to lean on God, and we're going to see where this goes. But I feel like that little moment, which it sounds like for you, that moment was when your family was telling you, let's go to church, and you were like, no, 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 no. And then you finally said, okay, fine, whatever. We'll go to church. Let's go to church. And maybe that was that moment of saying, all right, I'm angry, I'm upset, I can't believe you did this to me, but I'm going to go. And that's still saying, and I feel like that's still okay to feel the anger and to feel those emotions of anger,
Absolutely.
of not understanding why, but still saying, I'm still gonna lean on God and just go that direction. And then after that comes that feeling of peace. So with Dex, again, once everybody was gone, I was in the closet having a full breakdown and not knowing how I was gonna get myself together. My husband Danny had taken our son Davin, who was a year and a half at the time, to the park so I can have a moment to myself. And in that moment of breaking down and crying, I remember just feeling like I was never gonna be whole again, like I was never gonna be able to make it. And I felt the warmth. I felt a warmth in my heart, in my chest, and I'm crying. So I opened my eyes because I wasn't sure if it was somebody had showed up, and I noticed that I was by myself, and I just kind of froze because I wanted to see if I was really feeling that warmth, because I knew I was by myself. I was cold in the house. I mean, the AC was down, but I felt a warmth. And right in that instant, it was the peace. Yes. It just felt peaceful. I stopped crying, and it was just a feeling of, I'm gonna be okay. Yes. It's gonna be fine, which didn't make sense to me. So I could only attribute that to God, because nothing else makes sense. There's nothing else. But I feel like that starts with that fork in the road that I keep talking about, and choosing, saying, I don't know how I'm gonna get through this, but I choose to go towards God. I choose that path.
Correct.
And then the rest kind of unfolds in a way where God shows you that He is there. He is with you. He was with Justin. He has him with him. And I think that's so beautiful. I didn't know that you had experienced that. And because I wanted to hear it for the first time here. I knew parts of the story, but not the whole thing. But I think it's beautiful how I felt the same. I thought I didn't know that anybody else has felt that.
I feel like God will meet you in your darkest moment, and He will wrap you with His love, His comfort, His strength, His peace, and He lets you know, I'm here. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I'm going to walk before you. I walk alongside you, and I go behind you. He's there through those darkest moments. He's there too. He is the great comforter. And in this process, it's hard to make sense when things just don't make sense. And you just are so confused. But God is there to just walk alongside us and let us know that it is going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And when you talk about that, in that moment, I'm not thinking about those two paths, because that sort of comes later on. But I remember thinking, I did get to a point where I thought, there's two roads here that I can travel. I can travel down, and both roads are difficult. Both paths are difficult. But I thought, I either travel down the road where I'm bitter, I isolate myself, I'm angry, I'm upset, or I can travel down this other road, and this road is I'm going to draw closer to God. I'm going to heal, because my heart is broken right now.
Completely broken.
It's completely shattered into a million pieces. But I'm going to, when you're sick, you want to get better, so you take medicine, right? And so I knew that I was going to have to go down this path of healing mind, body, soul, because I was still here, and I still had so much to live for.
And
I had two children who also matter, and I wanted them to know that their lives matter. And I still needed to be their mom. And I remember that first week that my son had passed, a friend of mine had come to visit me, a dear friend of mine, and we were sitting at my kitchen table and we were having a conversation. And she had shared with me how years ago, when she was also young, she had lost her brother and her father a few days apart from each other. And she shared that what was the most challenging for her was that her and her siblings always grew up feeling as though their mom was never able to cope from the loss of her husband and her son. And so they grew up feeling as though they lost their father, they lost their brother, but in a sense, they also felt like they lost their mother because she did go down
So
that
what would
other
you
path. And I
say
remember thinking,
to,
I don't want to be that mom.
so let's say to
And
a
it was so
mom,
important to
maybe
me.
to a mom that may be experiencing a loss right now, that may be walking in grief, and maybe she has other children, what would you say to that mom? Like, how do you handle that? How do you still go through your own grief journey, but then your children are also going through their own grief journey because they also lost their sibling? So I guess, how do you handle all that?
I would say to that mom, I would say community. Definitely surround yourself with community. There are people who will come and support you and encourage you. Lean into the grief. You don't want to turn away from the grief. You want to lean into the grief and embrace the support and the encouragement that you're surrounded with. Also, the other thing that I would recommend would be to seek therapy. Super important. Almost immediately, I found a grievance counselor, and my children and I started to see this grievance counselor, and it was
Together?
we would together
Individually and then together.
individually.
Okay.
So I would have my one-on-one, he would have his one-on-one with them, and then we had moments where we were able to come together as well.
Did that help the Ethan and Bella?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything plays a part. Having spiritual mentors in my life helped tremendously as well, because I knew that I had sisters in Christ that were available to pick up the phone, and I could let them know, hey, I'm having a hard day today. Can you pray for me? And they would stop whatever they were doing and just be able to embrace that moment with me and to pray with me and to be able to uplift my spirits in that moment. And the other thing I would encourage them to do as well would be to also find a support group for grief and loss. And so that was another thing that I looked for after the accident. I
did too.
looked and I couldn't find. When I went to my church, they didn't have a grief and loss support group. There were a few that were online. I didn't really feel comfortable with that scenario. And so I read books. There were books that I can share with you, so you can share with the viewers, that helped me along my healing journey. Community, church, stay connected. If you belong to a church, lean into your church family. If you don't, plug yourself in. I truly believe that will help you heal as well. But one of the things that I did 2 years later was I just kept thinking that there had to be purpose in this pain, and that I wanted to be able to help others who were also lost and confused and who felt alone. And so 2 years ago, I started a grief and loss support group of my own.
Which I think that's
with my
so
church.
awesome. I wish I would have had that, or I wish I would have known about
With
that
my
back
church.
then.
And it's every Monday night out of my home at 7:30. And I have such an amazing group of women that attend, women who have lost children, spouses, parents, siblings, experiencing grief. And together we have been able to unpack all of the different topics, right? Because grief is so multifaceted. You have loneliness, you have anger, you have how do I experience
Guilt.
joy? Like I feel guilty when I experience joy. Like, am I okay? Is it okay to be happy?
I'm so happy you brought that up, because that's actually something that when I went through our experience, my husband Danny, we had a whole conversation about this. Especially, we go more in depth in episode 1, but we basically talked about that, just the guilt. Well, one of two: either the guilt that we feel when you first start to experience a little bit of joy, right? So I remember feeling, okay, I'm never gonna laugh again. How will I ever laugh again? And then my 1.5-year-old at the time said something funny, and I started to laugh, and I caught myself like stopping, because I was like, oh wait, is it too soon? Am I not supposed to laugh yet? Like, as if I had to honor my child that passed by not being happy. And Danny at the time told me, he's like, it's fine. You are allowed. God wants you to be happy.
Yes.
You deserve to be happy. You don't owe sadness to anyone. And it is what it is. If you if you boil it down, would our child that passed, would they want to look down at us and see us crying and see us sad? No. They want to see us happy. They want to see us like we're okay, like we're not completely broken. So it's I feel like it's such a misconception, and it's almost not even from the person grieving itself. It's more so from other people. Correct. Like other outsiders expect you to be sad and broken forever.
So you have different buckets of expectations. There are those who expect for you to grieve forever. There's those who are expecting you to speed up your grieving process. And then there's those who understand. So there's definitely 3 different buckets. And so my response to that is when you know that your loved one, they're in heaven. In heaven, there's no pain, there's no sadness, there's joy. And they're walking along streets of gold. They are living their best lives. And I always think that as much as our loved ones love us and they adore us, if after having a taste of heaven, if God himself were to ask them, you can either stay here or go back to earth. As much as they love us and adore us, after having a touch of heaven, they would stay in heaven.
Oh, I never thought about it that way. I never thought about it that way.
That's what we're all going there, right? So for those who love the Lord and believe in Jesus Christ as our Savior, correct? That's the promise, is that we will meet again. Right. And so that's what I hold on to in my darkest moments. I think I will see him again. He's safe. If he could be anywhere else in this world that's not with me, he's with Jesus. He's in the best care possible. And I will see him again. And like I said,
does that give you peace in that moment?
It gives me peace in that moment because of the promise that this life that we live here on earth is temporary, but heaven is a real place, and we have the promise that we are going to live in eternity with our loved ones and be reunited. And so that moment brings joy to my heart. And there is a verse that says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy is coming in the morning. And so it's biblical. It is okay to cry. Cry when you have to cry. But that crying is temporary. That crying will pass. And you will have your moment of happiness and joy, and you welcome those emotions too. So
So
We weren't
don't
meant
push off
to
the
grieve.
joy and the happiness whenever
No.
you do end up
If
feeling it.
anything, it helps your healing journey. So it's very important to do the things that bring you joy because they help you heal. And so working out produces positive endorphins. Working out is good. If you like to travel, travel. If you like shopping, go shopping. Do the things that make you happy and bring you joy because they are all parts of that healing process. Making memories with your loved ones, taking your kids to the park. And if you think about it, our loved ones would want us to see us happy. They would want us to continue to be happy and live out the rest of our lives. And so I am always reminded of that when you have the emotions, you're going to have waves of emotion and they come without warning. And so when you could be okay one moment, everything is fine, you're going throughout your day, you're about to pull up to a McDonald's, place an order, and the grief just hits you and you're like, I was just fine 2 seconds ago. And you have a wave. And I always tell everyone, welcome the emotion. So when you need to cry, cry. Give yourself a good cry, but let it out.
It's the same
Crying
thing.
is actually healthy. It's good to
It's a
get
reset.
tears. And when you feel happy, be happy, but allow yourself to process all of those emotions. But definitely allow yourself to feel the emotions and also walk alongside others who are going through the same because it really does give you that support that you need to move forward and knowing that I have a community of women that understand me. They get it, and
Yeah.
you're there for each other.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that hard cry. I talk a lot about that hard cry and just having that real good cry. Like when you feel it, as women, we tend to want to be strong and not cry and hold it in. But that hard cry, so good. Like whether you're in the car, in the office, in your house, just grab a pillow, cry really hard and let it out. And within a few minutes, you're going to feel like you can breathe again. Like your heart is not as heavy and you can actually take a deep breath and have a little bit of that feeling, and it's so important to do that because I keep saying if you don't let the hurt out, then there's no room for healing.
Correct. And this is a process. I have come to the understanding that life and loss run parallel to each other. They absolutely do. We are going to grieve forever because our love is forever. Our love is unconditional and our love is eternal. And so we will grieve. The best way I can explain it is that as time goes by, it won't feel as heavy, if that makes sense. If you are truly walking along this healing journey, it'll just get lighter. You'll still feel the sting, the hurt, the pain, but it won't feel as strong,
Yeah, 100%. What would you say is a good way for others, like outsiders, family, friends, to support a grieving mom? Because it's hard. I know we've talked about that the only person that truly understands is another mom that has gone through a loss of a child. But I feel like there are people around us that want to help their loved one that may be grieving. So what would be a good way? But sometimes it's so hard for them to know what to say or how to approach them or what not to say, right?
Correct.
So what do you think is a good way for family and friends to support a mom when she's going through that grief?
So my number one recommendation would be to just show up. Just show up. I cannot tell you how grateful I am for those who simply showed up. They knew what had happened. They had heard about the accident, and they just showed up at my house. They showed up at my door, and they were there in person to pray over me and my family, to walk through my house, clean. I remember glimpses, right? Because there's a lot that you don't remember, but I do remember people would just show up with like groceries, and they would stock the refrigerator and the freezer, and even things like paper towel and toilet paper. I remember people going through my house doing laundry, washing dishes, repairing things that were like broken. They were like, they just would come in with a crew. They refreshed my garden. I mean, these are all little things that I kind of like remember. I would open my door sometimes and there were groceries that had been delivered sitting right outside my door.
Wow.
And the thing is that, and even a meal train, a friend of mine set up a meal train that ran for like 3 months. I didn't have to think about cooking dinner. That's something so simple and so routine becomes forgotten because you're processing and you're in a state of shock and you just can't think of those things. And so I'm so grateful for those who just showed up, because I cannot tell you how many people would tell me, let me know what you need. What do you need? How can I help?
And in the moment,
I never
you can't
had
think.
an answer for them. Right. I never had an answer for them. I remember when I would come, like at some point, I remember saying, I'm going to be okay. I just want to make sure my kids are going to get through this.
Right.
I'm okay. I'm a big girl. Like, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to do what I have to do to work through this. But I just want to make sure that my kids are okay. So I just remember thinking, like, please, I just want my kids to be okay. Like, I want to just be a good mom and get them the support and the resources that they needed themselves, because also they were 10 and 6 and we were all grieving so differently. And I just wanted to make sure that like my kids were going to be okay, right, because they were so young and this was their sibling. And so I was grieving him as my son, but they were grieving him as their brother. Right. And then they also were watching mom grieve, and this was very new for them. And so that was my only response, is like, just help with the kids. I just want to make sure that the kids are okay. But that's what I would recommend. Just show up, because when you ask the person how they can help, they're almost never going to have an answer.
Right.
Especially when they're in a state of shock. That's true. Or a lot of times we are not used to asking for help either, right? And it's not that we don't want the help or need the help, but we just like, what do I do? Like, well, here's a list of to do. Like, go at it, And so I would say just show up and be there to just be a support. I remember, I still to this day, it'll be 4 years in October, and I still have friends and family members that will, every now and then, when I need it the most, I'll receive a text. Hey, I'm praying for you today. My heart is with you. I'm grieving alongside you. And I just think like those little moments, they make all the difference in the world, because I think there's an army of angels on this earth who are still surrounding me and my kids, praying for us. And that means so much. Those would be my dues. Another thing I would say is, because sometimes they don't know what to say, right?
Right, yeah.
And so, and sometimes they could say the wrong thing. And I will say, I won't share specifics, but there have been comments that were made throughout this time too, that just pierce. That was like not the right thing to say. And they do more harm than good. And so I would say, if you're kind of like, oh, I don't know what to say, if someone that I know has lost a loved one, the best thing to do is give your condolences and let them know that you're praying for them. That means
keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
And
just I'm praying for you, or I'm here for you.
And just show up.
Thinking of you, sending you blessings, sending you light, sending you prayers, just leave it at that.
And don't ask, would you like, no, just whatever God convicts you to do, just do it. Yeah. That conviction, activate it. And if he convicts you to drop off a gift card, drop off the gift card. If he convicts you to drop off groceries, drop off groceries. I will tell you, all of those little things, what might seem little to you, makes a world of a difference to the person grieving the loss of their loved one, because those are things that they're not thinking of at all
That's
during
true.
that time. And the other thing too is, this is not something that you ever move on. You don't move on.
You
You
just
move
learn to
fo-
live with
you
it.
you learn to live with it, you learn to cope, and you move forward. I always say we don't move on, but we move forward. We learn to carry our loved one with us in a different way. They're still with us. We're just carrying them in our hearts
Yeah,
in a different way.
I love that.
Yeah.
What would you say to a grieving mom, a mom that maybe has had an experience similar to yours, like, and maybe she's in a moment right now of grief. She's in sorrow. She doesn't know how she's gonna get through this. Like, what would you say to her?
I would say, to begin, there is hope. You're not alone. You have an army of angels on this earth who are here ready to support you, to encourage you. I would highly recommend that you find the grief and loss support group. You're more than welcome to join mine, but there are many available. You just have to find them. But definitely connect yourself to other women who are going through what you're going through. Lean into the grief. Don't isolate yourself. Lean into it. It's okay to not feel okay. All of the emotions that you're experiencing, I promise you, we've experienced them, and it's part of the process. But I'm here to let you know that you are going to be okay, and there is hope for the hurting. And surround yourself with a community. Community is super important. Do things that make you happy, that fill you with joy, bring happiness to your soul, and connect yourself to your local church as well. And there's also so many resources online and also books that are available that will help you with your healing journey as well.
That was awesome. That is, and it's funny because we've never had this conversation. We've talked about your story and my story in a brief, but I feel like everything you've touched on, and even these pointers, like, that is exactly what I've experienced, and that is exactly the advice that I give moms that are in the same situation. But it's a little freaky because we've never talked about it, and hearing you say it, I'm like, oh, okay, it's not just me. Okay, she sees it the same way.
Yeah.
Which is, it's awesome to know that you see it the same way. So thank you so much.
And I'm so glad that we came to know our stories.
I know.
Here, because I do remember when the accident happened, you were one of those people that were there. You did come by my house, and I remember offering your condolences, and I had also known little, in not great detail, a little bit about what you had gone through, but we never really spoke in detail, not even in preparation for today.
No, and I didn't want to. I thought about it for
Yeah.
today, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna let it. Let me see let's just let it happen naturally and genuinely. So,
Yeah.
but I loved hearing your story, and
Thank you for having me.
pray that we are able to help a lot of
Yes.
even if it's one mom that we can help today, that
Yes.
to give her hope and so that she can begin this healing journey.
Absolutely.
If someone wants to connect with you about your Connect group for grieving moms, how can they? What's your Instagram handle? Maybe they can just connect with you through there.
Absolutely. So my Instagram handle is Jax, which is J as in Jackie, A as in Apple, X as in X-ray, X as in X-ray again, __66. And so there you can contact me, and I will share the information in regards to the grief and loss support group that I do lead in my home Monday nights at 7:30. And I just pray that you would see this episode today and be able to find some healing in something that we shared today, or a resource that we have provided that will help you along your healing journey. But again, you're not alone. We are here. Fabiana's here. What you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you.
And I'm so glad to be able to walk alongside you. It's not easy, but this is what turning pain into purpose looks like.
Yeah.
And God is proud of you. I'm proud of you. There's so many people that are proud of you.
I keep saying that I don't know that I didn't feel at the time like I could have been healed or that I was going to be healed. I felt like I was going to be broken forever. So this podcast is my gift to God for healing me when I didn't think that number one, I didn't think I deserved to be healed because I was just a normal person. I didn't feel like I was anything special to be handpicked to be healed. I was just a regular human living my regular human life. And so I didn't feel like I deserved to be healed, and I didn't think that I was going to be healed. So God still healing me is a miracle. So this is my gift to him. And hopefully through this community and through this podcast, we can help a lot of other moms. So if you've watched this podcast, thank you so much for joining us today. Like it, subscribe so you can see the other more episodes that are going to be coming up. And again, thank you so much for joining us. And if you know a mom that maybe this is not your personal grief story, but you know a mom that would benefit from our conversation here today, please share this with her so that together we can help more moms heal and feel hope again and feel joyful and happy again. Thank you so much.